It's absolutely freezing. Here I am, back at the recycling again, with another 15 or so bottles to get rid of. And now that they're empty, I feel confident enough to give them a kind of review, a bit of a score, and let you know whether I would replace them or not. First up, AnCnoc, 22-year-old. This is a fantastic whisky, kind of really dark, rich, soft fruits, dark chocolate, and kind of like a distant wisp of smoke that you would only really detect if you were drinking it in contrast maybe with something that had no smoke at all. But really this is made even better by the fact that this is a 22-year-old whisky for £90. This was a friend's whisky. This is a Whisky Rev paid less than £90 for this, which is fantastic value. Unfortunately it's discontinued now, but it has been replaced by a 24-year-old that is similarly good value, a 24-year-old AnCnoc for £120. Just fantastic value whisky. This one is well presented as well at 46%, and I would certainly love to have a bottle of this back in the collection again, especially at that kind of price level. This is an 8 to 8.5 out of 10 that's probably worth another half a mark more for just how good value it is. Brilliant stuff. This is gin. Old Pulteney, 21. This is another one of the Whisky Revs bottles. Old Pulteney 21 is just a wonderful whisky. Unfortunately it's discontinued now, so it's going to be tough to get a hold of this. But if you do see it, and if you see it anywhere at reasonable money, and I mean anywhere up to about 150 or so pounds, it really is worth it. Because if you pour a dram of this and you sit down in front of a flavour wheel, for example, you could go around that entire flavour wheel and you'd probably be able to pick out something of everything in this whisky. That's how complex this is, that's how rich it is, and just how wonderful a whisky prospect it is. It was wonderful value when it was around. It's getting quite expensive now, but still, if you can find this, get it. This is a 9.5 out of 10. It's fantastic. Glen Alba. This is a blend from a local European supermarket called Lidl's. It's a 22-year-old blend, and this cost me I think about £29.99, £30 or so for a 22-year-old blend. Okay, it's a wee bit soft, it's 40%, sure it's chill filtered and it's going to be coloured, but really for that money, for 22-year-old whisky, you can pour it and give it to everybody that turns up at your house, and it's really soft, easily accessible, and quite tasty actually. Yes, I would replace this again, and it should have a spot in everybody's cupboard at that money. Decent stuff, 7.5 out of 10. Big Peat from Douglas Laing. This is one of their regional malts. This is the Isle expression, and I always find it quite curious that they list Ardbeg, Colilla, Bowmore and Port Ellen. They put Port Ellen on there, and I often wonder just how much Port Ellen is actually going to be in this. This is a decent whisky for people that like a peaty hit. It's usually good value, it's well presented at 46% as well, and it's pretty decent. It's a good whisky. I'm ambivalent as to whether I'd have this in the collection or not. There's just so many other good peaty whiskies out there right now, but this is still reasonable value, reasonable money, and I would give this a strong 8.5 out of 10. Good job. Aberfeldy, 21-year-old. I bought this in the airport, travel retail. I wanted this for a long time because I'd heard it was really good. Unfortunately, it suffers hugely again from being bottled at 40%, which is just such a shame because it could have been so much better. It's very honey forward, it's a very honeyed single malt. It was good when it started, it got really good towards the end, but not nearly as good as it could have been, just with a little bit more bite, a little bit more grip to it. Still, I would say it's a decent whisky and I'd give it a strong 8 out of 10. I don't think I'm going to replace it though. Cragganmore 12-year-old, one of Diageo's classic malts, one of the original classic malts from way back in the late 80s when this series first launched. This is still a very solid Speyside example. It's still damn good whisky. I've never had a bottle of Cragganmore and kind of not enjoyed it. It's really good. This one is bottled at 40%. It's decent whisky, 7.5 out of 10, and yes, when this is available for reasonable money, I would always have this as a stable in the cabinet. Good stuff. Lagavulin 16. As you can see, I do get through quite a bit of this. And that's because in 2009, this is the whisky that was responsible for changing me from just a casual whisky fan into a whisky geek. I love this stuff. This is still £50 or thereabouts for a 16-year-old single malt, and it's wonderful. That deep, dark, rich smoke and the sweet sherry notes that wrap around it, it's just fabulous stuff, and I'll always have a bottle of this in the house. 8.5 out of 10. Sometimes even more. Another peaty one. This is a Bunnahabhain, 8-year-old Bunnahabhain, peated from Gordon and MacPhail. This is part of the Gordon and MacPhail's collection series. The good thing about this is that Islay whiskies right now are getting more and more expensive all the time, more and more in demand, especially the peaty ones. And yet Gordon and MacPhail are putting this out there at £30, £35, not much more than that, and it's really, really good. 8-year-old is a perfect age for a heavily peated whisky, and this is very well presented and just delicious. Every drop of this was enjoyed, and at that money, this is an 8.5 out of 10 all day long. Glengoyne Teapot Dram. Wonderful stuff. This is batch 5. This was ridiculously easy to get through, which is bizarre for a 59.6% ABV whisky. This is young, bold, sherry, exclusively sherry cask aged whisky, and it just goes to show how powerful a proposition a young whisky can be. It was just so engaging. Everybody I shared this with, and this was shared a lot, everybody agreed that this was a showstopper. There's not much of this left now. If you can find it, buy it. It's £90, and after tasting it and enjoying it, you'll probably feel that you need to go back to Glengoyne and give them some more money. That's how good this is. 9 out of 10, and I would certainly have this in the cabinet again if I could get hold of it. This is probably my favourite, and my top 3 favourite 12-year-olds. This along with maybe Bunnahabhain 12 and Kilkerran 12. This is Blair Athol, which is Flora and Fauna series Blair Athol from a Highland distillery. Most of this stuff goes into the Bell's blend, but this is their single malt, the only single malt, official single malt bottling you can get of Blair Athol. It's wonderful. It's a wee bit dry and spicy for a lot of people, but I love this. I've already got another bottle inside, and I would always have this in the cabinet if I could. 8.5 out of 10. Ledaig 10-year-old. This is good for a few reasons. The first reason is that this is a different take on a peaty whisky. This is a slightly richer, softer, more honeyed peat, I would say. And the other reason is that this is from Burn Stewart, who are now owned by Distell. All of their core offerings are 46.3% with age statement, unchill filtered, and the majority of them, I believe, are natural colour as well. Which is fantastic presentation, but the value of these is not in question either. This is about £30 to £35, and it's a wonderful example of a peated whisky. This is a fantastic whisky to get people who are not sure about peat yet on the peat trail. I haven't replaced this yet, but I will replace it as soon as I can find another bottle. This is 9 out of 10. Clynelish 14-year-old. It's Clynelish. There's nothing more to say. It's wonderful. This is a 14-year-old whisky for £35 from one of the best distilleries in Scotland. Part of the extended classic malts from Diageo, they're now bottling this at 46% as well, which also helps. Any Clynelish is welcome in your house, surely, but this at that price is fantastic value. This is always going to be in my house, and this is 9 out of 10. Glenfarclas, 25-year-old Glenfarclas. This is a good 25-year-old Speyside expression, but what makes it really good is a 25-year-old whisky, and it's £120. I don't know how they do it, I don't know how they continue to do it, but it's wonderful value. It's maybe not the best example of a 25-year-old whisky, I would say, but it's still damn good, and certainly for that price there can be no argument with it at all. I would certainly have this again at home. It's wonderful to pour for people. It's very good at winter time and around Christmas. It does suffer a wee bit from being only 43%, but you know, who's going to give them a hard time when they're presenting this continually at that value? Wonderful stuff. 8 out of 10 and worthy of anybody's cabinet space. Balblair. This is the 05. This is a distilled 05 and bottled in 2015, so around about their 10-year-old expression. It's a bit pricey for a 10-year-old. You'd probably have to pay about £35 to £40 for this, but it's still very good, especially if you like honeyed whiskies. This is very honey forward, this whisky, and very light and delicate. Quite nice balance to it as well. I would say this is good. There's so many Balblairs out there, so many good value Balblairs out there, that yes, I would have this again, but there's just so much to explore. If you found it at a good price, I would recommend it. It's a good solid 8 out of 10. Nikka Yuuichi. This is the non-age statement version of the Yoichi, peated version, and it came in a 50cl bottle. I found it to be a very beautiful little thing. I have to be honest, when I started off with this I didn't like it, but the further down the bottle went, the closer I got to the end of the bottle, the better it became, to the point that when the last few drams were finished out of it, I realised I was going to miss this. I don't know if this is still available, and to be honest, Japanese whisky in general tends to be past its value point, the good stuff anyway. So I'm not in a hurry to replace this, but I would keep an eye out for it to see if it was available anywhere, and if I saw it at a reasonable price, I would definitely pick it up again. Again, another 8 out of 10 whisky. Wow, there's been nothing to really be very negative about this time. It's a good time to be into whisky. Until next time.